Why does the one you gave everything to turn away without gratitude? Is it their fault, or is it about something deeper? Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of love, and yet silence, indifference, maybe even resentment. You ask yourself, where did I go wrong? Why does my child not see me for who I am? If you've ever felt this pain, know that you are not alone. Many parents bear the weight of unspoken gratitude, of love given freely but seemingly unreturned. And it hurts. It cuts deeper than words can express. But what if I told you it's not about your child at all? What if the key to your peace lies not in changing them, but in changing how you see this pain? Today, we turn to Stoicism, the ancient wisdom that has guided emperors, warriors, and thinkers through the hardest of human emotions. Through 7 powerful Stoic principles, you will learn how to reclaim your inner peace, free yourself from the weight of expectations, and find strength where others see suffering. By the end of this video, you will discover why expectations are the true source of your suffering and how to let them go, the hidden trap of emotional debt, and why love should never be a transaction, how to establish boundaries that command respect without conflict, the one mindset shift that can liberate you from resentment forever. Stay until the end, because the final lesson might change how you see everything. You've given everything. Now it's time to take back control. Let's begin. Letting go of unmet expectations. Letting go of unmet expectations. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's one of the hardest things to do. You give everything, your time, your love, your sacrifices, expecting just a little in return. A thank you, a visit, a call to check if you're okay. And when that doesn't happen, it hurts deeply. But here's the truth. The pain isn't from your child's actions. It's from the expectations you built silently over the years. Seneca once said, "Expectations are the root of suffering." Think about it. Every time you expect someone to act a certain way, to love you back the way you love them, you're setting yourself up for pain. You see, it's not your child's actions that hurt you. It's the story you tell yourself about how they should act. But the reality is, they have their own life, their own journey, their own choices, and you can't control that, no matter how much you love them. Imagine this. A mother who always dreamed her son would visit her every weekend, just to sit, to talk, to laugh like they used to. She waited week after week, but he never came. Not because he didn't love her, but because his life was filled with responsibilities, work, a family of his own. She felt abandoned, not because he left her, but because she expected him to stay. Her pain wasn't from his actions, but from her expectations. Unmet expectations are like invisible chains. They bind you to a vision of how things should be, not how they really are. And each time reality doesn't match that vision, you feel pain, disappointment, even resentment. But who created those chains? Who built those expectations? It wasn't your child, it was you. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, taught us the dichotomy of control, the idea that there are things we can control and things we cannot. You can't control how your child chooses to live, who they become, or how they show love. But you can control how you respond, how you interpret their actions, and how you let it affect you. This is where your power lies, not in changing them, but in changing your expectations. You see, we often believe that if we love someone, they owe us love in return. If we sacrifice for them, they owe us gratitude. But that's not love. That's a transaction. And love, true love, doesn't keep score. It doesn't demand repayment. It gives freely without expecting anything in return. But how do you do that? How do you let go of expectations that have been there for so long? How do you stop measuring your worth by someone else's actions? The answer lies in a Stoic practice called premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization. It's the act of imagining the worst-case scenario, not to live in fear, but to prepare yourself emotionally. Imagine for a moment that your child may never say thank you, may never visit as often as you wish, may never show love the way you expect. If you can accept this possibility and make peace with it, then anything better than that becomes a gift. It's not about giving up on love, it's about freeing yourself from the chains of expectation. It's about loving without conditions, without demands, without waiting for anything in return. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. He was an emperor, a father, and a Stoic philosopher who faced immense loss. He lost children, people he loved deeply. Yet, he found peace, not by changing the world, but by changing his expectations of it. He wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." This is the essence of amor fati, the love of fate. To embrace life exactly as it is, without resistance, without demanding it to be different. To accept not just the good, but the pain, the loss, the unmet expectations. Because every event, every heartbreak, every disappointment is a part of your journey. It shapes you, teaches you, makes you who you are. But this isn't easy. Letting go of expectations feels like losing control. It feels like giving up, like surrendering. But in reality, it's the ultimate freedom. When you let go of how things should be, you begin to appreciate them just as they are. You find beauty in the imperfections, in the flaws, in the things you once thought were missing. And in that acceptance you find peace. Not the peace that comes from getting what you want, but the deeper peace that comes from wanting nothing at all, from realizing that your happiness, your worth, your love is not tied to anyone else's actions, but to your own state of mind. Does this mean you stop caring? No. It means you stop suffering from the things you cannot control. It means you stop measuring your love by the gratitude you receive. It means you love not to be loved back, but because love is who you are. Think of it this way. A flower doesn't bloom to be admired. It blooms because that's what it was created to do. Whether someone stops to appreciate it or walks by without noticing, it blooms fully, beautifully, without expectation. What if you could love like that? What if you could give without waiting for anything in return? This is the power of Stoicism, to release yourself from the prison of expectations and to find freedom in acceptance. To realize that you don't need your child's approval to be at peace. You don't need their gratitude to know your worth. You don't need their love to love yourself. When you let go of unmet expectations, you don't lose, you gain. You gain freedom from the past, from the pain, from the disappointment. You gain clarity to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. You gain peace to love, without conditions, without demands, without expectations. So today, practice letting go. Observe your thoughts. Notice when you're expecting something and gently release it. Remind yourself, this is not within my control, but my peace, my happiness, my love is. Does this mean you should stop hoping? No, but hope without expectation, love without conditions, give without waiting for a return. When you do this, you free yourself from the pain of unmet expectations and open your heart to a deeper, more unconditional love. If expectations create pain, what about the love you give? What happens when love turns into emotional debt? When giving feels like a burden? Let's talk about that in the next lesson. When love becomes emotional debt. Why does love sometimes feel so heavy? Why does giving everything leave you feeling empty? The answer lies not in the love itself, but in the invisible debt you've created without even realizing it. Love, when given freely, is the most powerful force. It uplifts, it heals, it connects. But when love carries an expectation, when it demands something in return, it turns into emotional debt. A debt that your child may never be able to repay. Think about it. You've sacrificed your dreams, your time, your happiness, all for the sake of your child. You've given and given until there was nothing left. And deep down, you hoped, you expected that they would one day acknowledge your sacrifices, appreciate your love, repay you with respect and gratitude. But they didn't. And every time they didn't call, every time they were distant, every time they didn't show the appreciation you craved, the debt grew, and so did your pain. Not because they didn't love you, but because they never agreed to this unspoken contract, this emotional debt that you unknowingly created. Here's the truth. When love expects something in return, it stops being love and starts being a transaction. And when that transaction is left unpaid, resentment begins to grow. You start feeling unappreciated, invisible, like everything you did meant nothing. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, said, "Do good, willingly, and without expecting any reward." He understood that true love doesn't keep score. It doesn't demand recognition. It gives freely, completely, without expectation. But how do you do that? How do you give without feeling used? How do you love without expecting anything in return? How do you break free from the emotional debt that's been building up for years? It begins with a shift in perspective, a realization that every sacrifice you made was your choice. You chose to give, not because you were obligated to, but because you loved. And true love doesn't demand repayment. Imagine this: a mother who poured everything into her children. She sacrificed her dreams, her career, her health, so they could have a better life. She gave them everything, but expected that when they grew up, they would take care of her, visit her, and show her the gratitude she longed for. But life didn't turn out that way. Her children moved away, became busy with their own lives, and visited only occasionally. She felt abandoned, hurt, even betrayed, not because they didn't love her, but because they didn't live up to the expectations she created in her mind. Every missed call, every missed visit was like a dagger to her heart. But her pain wasn't from their actions. It was from the emotional debt she built over the years, a debt they never agreed to pay. This is where Stoicism offers a liberating perspective. Marcus Aurelius teaches us to give without attachment, to do good, not for praise, but because it's the right thing to do. He reminds us that the reward is in the act itself, not in the acknowledgement of others. But how do you apply this? How do you let go of the need for gratitude and find peace, even when it's not given? Start by recognizing that your sacrifices were your choice. You chose to love, to give, to care, because that's who you are. Not because you expected something in return, but because love is your nature. Next, remind yourself that your child owes you nothing. Not because they don't love you, but because true love isn't a debt to be repaid. It's a gift to be given without strings attached. When you free them from this emotional debt, you free yourself from the pain of unmet expectations. And finally, practice gratitude, not for what you receive, but for the opportunity to give. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Choose to see your sacrifices, not as burdens, but as acts of love that shaped who you are." You see, love is not about what you get. It's about what you give, freely, unconditionally, without demand. And when you give without expectation, you find a deeper peace, a freedom that no one can take away. This doesn't mean you accept mistreatment or allow yourself to be used. It means you set boundaries, not to punish, but to protect your own well-being. It means you give from a place of strength, not weakness. It means you love, not to be loved back, but because love is who you are. This is the secret to emotional freedom, to give without becoming a prisoner to your own expectations, to love without waiting for a return, to sacrifice without turning it into debt. Does this mean you stop caring? No, it means you stop hurting from the lack of gratitude that you once expected. It means you stop measuring your worth by someone else's appreciation. It means you find joy in the act of giving itself. So today, let go of the emotional debt. Free yourself from the burden of expecting gratitude. Love, not for what you can receive, but for what you can give. When you do this, you unlock a love that is deeper, purer, more powerful than you ever imagined. If love turns into debt, it traps us. But what if the real issue is the lack of boundaries? Let's explore this in the next lesson. The power of setting boundaries. Why do they take you for granted? Why does your sacrifice go unnoticed, unappreciated, even disrespected? The answer may not lie in their actions, but in your lack of boundaries. When you give without limits, without expectations, without conditions, you think you're showing love. But in reality, you're teaching them that you don't need anything in return. You're teaching them that your time, your energy, your sacrifices are endless and cost you nothing. And when they don't see the cost, they don't value the gift. The truth is, love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-sacrifice, it's martyrdom, it's giving until there's nothing left. Not because you want to, but because you feel you have to. And when you give from obligation, from guilt, from fear of rejection, that love becomes invisible. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Love everyone, but trust only the few who deserve it." He understood that love without respect isn't love, it's submission. When you give without setting limits, you're not teaching them how to love you, you're teaching them how to use you. Imagine this: a mother who would drop everything to help her son. She would cancel her plans, lend him money, solve his problems, all in the name of love. She never said no because she believed that's what a good mother does. She gave and gave and gave until she felt empty. But the more she gave, the less he respected her. He started expecting her help, demanding her time, feeling entitled to her sacrifices. And when she finally said no, he was offended, even angry, because in his mind, she was breaking the unspoken rule that she would always be there, no matter what. Her love became his right, and her sacrifices became his expectations. But her pain didn't come from his actions. It came from her inability to set boundaries. She taught him to take because she never taught him to give back. This is the harsh truth. When you love without boundaries, you invite disrespect. When you give without conditions, you teach them that your needs don't matter. When you sacrifice without limits, you create a dynamic where they take and you give until you have nothing left. But it doesn't have to be this way. You have the power to change this dynamic, not by loving less, but by loving smarter. Not by giving less, but by giving with purpose, with intention, with respect for yourself and for them. In Stoicism, boundaries are not walls. They are bridges that create respect, understanding, and mutual value. They protect your peace, your dignity, your self-worth. They teach others how to love you without taking advantage of you. But how do you set boundaries without feeling guilty? How do you say no without feeling like you're failing them or letting them down? How do you protect yourself without shutting them out? It starts with realizing that saying no is not an act of rejection, it's an act of self-love. When you say no to things that drain you, you're saying yes to things that nurture you. When you set boundaries, you're not pushing them away. You're inviting them to respect you, to see your value, to appreciate your love. Marcus Aurelius taught us to love everyone, but to trust only the few who have earned it. This isn't about withholding love. It's about giving love with respect, with dignity, with self-awareness. It's about knowing that your love has value, and that value deserves to be honored. Here's how you do it. Start by recognizing where you feel drained, exhausted, taken for granted. These are the areas where your boundaries are weak or non-existent. Pay attention to the moments when you feel resentful or bitter. These emotions are signals that you've been giving without receiving, without being valued. Then learn to say no with love, with kindness, but with firmness, not as a punishment, not as a rejection, but as a way to protect your energy, your time, your peace. Practice saying, "I love you, but I can't do this right now," or "I care about you, but I need to take care of myself first." At first, they may resist, they may get upset because they're not used to it, but over time, they will learn that your love is not conditional, but your time, your energy, your sacrifices are not limitless. You see, boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about controlling yourself. They are about defining what you are willing to give and what you need to stay whole. They are about loving without losing yourself. This doesn't mean you stop helping them or that you love them any less. It means you help them without sacrificing yourself. It means you give without giving away your identity, your dreams, your peace. Imagine this: a mother who finally learned to set boundaries. She started saying no when she needed to rest. She started taking time for herself without feeling guilty. She continued to love, to support, to care, but she did it on her own terms. At first, her son was shocked, even upset, but over time, he learned to respect her limits, to appreciate her sacrifices, to value her time. Her love didn't diminish. It grew stronger because it was no longer fueled by obligation, but by genuine affection and mutual respect. This is the power of setting boundaries. It teaches them to value you, not because you demand it, but because you inspire it. It shows them that love is not about taking endlessly, but about giving and receiving in balance. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he said, "Love everyone, but trust only the few who deserve it." Trust, respect, gratitude, these are earned through boundaries, not through endless sacrifices. So today, give yourself permission to set boundaries without feeling guilty. Give yourself permission to say no without feeling selfish. Give yourself permission to love without losing yourself. Boundaries build respect. But what about when they don't see your sacrifice? Let's explore recognition in the next lesson. Stop seeking recognition. Why do we long for recognition from those who seem incapable of giving it? Why do we wait for gratitude, for appreciation, only to be met with silence? The truth is, waiting for recognition is like waiting for the sun in the middle of the night. You can hope for it, expect it, even demand it, but it will not come. And the longer you wait, the more pain you invite into your life. Think about this. A mother who gives everything to her child. She sacrifices, she nurtures, she loves without limits. But as the years pass, she realizes something. The thank yous never come. The appreciation is never expressed. The love feels one-sided, and the silence, it cuts deeper than words ever could. She asks herself, why doesn't my child appreciate me? After all I've done, why do I feel invisible? The pain of feeling unappreciated is real. It is heavy. It is exhausting. But here's what Epictetus teaches us. True recognition cannot come from outside. It comes from knowing you did the right thing. This means the validation you seek is not in their words. It is not in their actions. It is in your own heart. Imagine for a moment that you never receive the recognition you crave. Imagine that your child never acknowledges your sacrifices, never expresses gratitude, never gives you the validation you so deeply desire. What then? Will you let that steal your peace? Will you let their inability to see define your worth? Or will you take back control? The problem is not their lack of appreciation. It is our expectation of it. We give, but secretly hope for something in return. We love, but deep down, we expect to be loved in the way we want. But love, true love, is not a transaction. If we are giving only to receive, then we are not giving, we are bargaining. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And what are the thoughts that shape your suffering? The belief that your worth is measured by how others treat you. The belief that if they don't acknowledge you, then you have failed. But these are illusions, shadows, distractions from the truth. And the truth is this: you do not need their recognition. You never did. Your value is not dependent on their gratitude. Your worth is not determined by their appreciation. The love you have given is enough. The sacrifices you have made are enough. The person you are is enough. Consider this. A woman named Elena dedicated her entire life to her children. She worked tirelessly, gave without hesitation, always putting them first. But as they grew older, she noticed something. They rarely called, they rarely visited. When they did, it felt like an obligation. She sat with this pain, wondering where she had gone wrong. But then she asked herself a different question. Did I give out of love, or was I always waiting for something in return? The answer changed everything. She realized that love should be free, not bound by expectations. She realized that she had done her part, and that was enough. That's what Stoicism teaches us. To let go of external validation, to shift our focus inward, to ask ourselves, did I act with virtue? Did I do the right thing? Did I love fully, without conditions? Because if the answer is yes, then we are free. So how do we let go of the need for recognition? How do we stop waiting for the thank you, for the validation, for the appreciation that may never come? First, accept that not everyone is capable of giving what you seek. Their inability to recognize your worth does not diminish your worth. Their blindness to your sacrifices does not erase them. Expecting something from those who cannot give is a path to suffering. Second, redefine what recognition means to you. Recognition is not in words, it is in actions. It is in the quiet ways you have shaped the world. It is in the love you have given, the lessons you have passed down, the lives you have touched. Even if they never say thank you, you have still made an impact. Third, find peace in self-validation. Look in the mirror and say, I am enough. Say it until you believe it. Say it until you no longer crave their approval. Say it until you can stand tall, without waiting for anyone else to lift you up. And finally, release resentment, because resentment is nothing more than an unpaid debt you are waiting to collect. But the longer you wait, the heavier it becomes. The moment you let go, the moment you stop waiting, you become free. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, do what is right, even if no one acknowledges it. Act with virtue, even if no one sees it. Give with love, even if no one returns it. Because in the end, it is not their recognition that matters, it is your own. Imagine yourself years from now, looking back on your life. Will you regret not being appreciated? Or will you smile, knowing that you lived with integrity, that you gave because it was who you were, not because you expected something in return, that you loved without needing permission or validation? Because that is true freedom. That is real strength. That is Stoicism. So if recognition isn't coming, then where should our emotional strength come from? Let's explore that in the next lesson. Emotional independence is freedom. Emotional dependence is a prison we build for ourselves. We tie our happiness to the actions of others, waiting, hoping, expecting, only to be disappointed. And when it comes to our children, this dependency becomes even more painful. We give and we wait. We love and we expect. We sacrifice and we assume that one day it will all come back to us in the form of gratitude, love, and respect. But what happens when that day never comes? A mother wakes up every morning, checking her phone, hoping for a message from her son. Silence. She waits by the door on weekends, hoping he will visit. He doesn't. The longer she waits, the more she suffers. She starts to wonder, did I not raise him well? Did I do something wrong? Why doesn't he care? The truth is, he might love her, but he is living his own life. He is caught up in his own world, and she has made her emotional well-being dependent on his attention. This is where Stoicism offers us a path to freedom. Epictetus said, "No one is free who is not master of themselves." And this is the key to emotional independence. The moment we place our happiness in someone else's hands, we lose control of our own lives. If our peace depends on whether our child calls us, we are not free. If our joy depends on whether they show appreciation, we are not free. If our self-worth is tied to their approval, we are not free. But what does it mean to master yourself? It means learning to generate your own emotional stability, independent of external validation. It means recognizing that love, real love, is not about expecting something in return. It means reclaiming your peace, even in the face of neglect, disappointment, or rejection. Imagine this. A woman named Anna spent years feeling heartbroken because her son rarely visited. Every holiday, she set the table, waiting for him to arrive. Every birthday, she expected a call. Every time he failed to show up, she felt more invisible. But then she discovered Stoicism, and she asked herself, why am I waiting for someone else to give me peace? Why am I letting his actions dictate my happiness? So she changed her perspective. Instead of focusing on what she lacked, she focused on what she could control. She built a life of her own. She invested in her own growth, her own joy, her own serenity. She learned to appreciate solitude. She found hobbies, passions, and friendships. And the most surprising thing, when she stopped waiting, she stopped hurting. That is the power of emotional independence. It is the ability to be content with yourself without needing constant reassurance from others. It is the strength to say, I am whole, with or without their recognition. It is the wisdom to understand that suffering is often just attachment disguised as love. So how do we cultivate this independence? How do we break free from emotional dependency? First, we must observe our own thoughts. Every time you feel hurt because someone did not meet your expectations, stop and ask yourself, what am I attaching my happiness to? If the answer is another person's actions, remind yourself that you are giving away your power. Bring it back. Take a deep breath. Detach. Let go. Second, practice inner dialogue. Marcus Aurelius would often write to himself, reminding himself of what truly mattered. You can do the same. The next time you feel rejected, write this. Their actions are theirs. My peace is mine. No one can take that from me. Repeat it. Live by it. Third, cultivate self-sufficiency. Find joy outside of relationships. Find meaning beyond being needed. Build a life where you do not wait for love, but create it within yourself. And finally, release expectations. Love, not because you hope to receive, but because it is who you are. Give, not because you need recognition, but because generosity is its own reward. When you stop expecting, you stop being disappointed. When you stop needing, you start being free. Epictetus reminds us, you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And the greatest response to neglect is not bitterness, it is not resentment, it is not sorrow, it is self-mastery. So if your child forgets to call, smile anyway. If they don't recognize your sacrifices, acknowledge them yourself. If they don't love you in the way you want, love yourself in the way you deserve. This is the ultimate freedom, the ability to stand tall in the face of indifference, the ability to remain peaceful despite disappointment, the ability to know deep within your soul that you are enough. And that is Stoicism. That is strength. That is emotional independence. But what about the things we simply can't change? What happens when reality itself is different from what we had hoped for? Let's explore that in the next lesson. Accepting what you cannot change. Here's the detailed script for the Accepting What You Cannot Change section in your video. There is nothing more painful than realizing that no matter how much we love someone, no matter how much we try, we cannot control them. We cannot make them think the way we want. We cannot force them to see our sacrifices. And we certainly cannot change who they are, even if we believe it is for their own good. A mother spends years shaping her child, guiding them, teaching them. She expects that they will grow up to reflect the values she instilled. But one day, she realizes they are different. They make choices she does not understand. They walk a path that she never imagined for them, and she feels helpless. She tries to talk to them, to explain, to convince, to change their minds. But instead of gratitude, she meets resistance. Instead of appreciation, she is met with distance. And with each failed attempt, she feels more and more like a stranger in her own child's life. This is the harsh reality of life. We cannot control others, even those we love the most, and yet we try. We fight against reality, wishing things were different. We replay conversations in our minds, thinking, if only I had said this, if only they understood, if only they could see things my way. But all of this resistance, all of this effort, only leads to frustration and suffering. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, faced this very dilemma. He could not control the actions of his own son, Commodus. He could not force his advisors to be honest. He could not ensure that the people around him would act with virtue. But instead of despairing, he practiced something radical, something that gave him peace. He practiced amor fati, the love of fate. He wrote, "Love what has been given to you by fate, for what could be more fitting?" What does this mean? It means embracing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. It means understanding that every event, every challenge, every disappointment is part of the natural flow of life. Instead of resisting, we accept. Instead of complaining, we adapt. Instead of wishing things were different, we find meaning in the way they are. Acceptance is not weakness. It is not resignation. It is power. It is wisdom. It is the realization that peace does not come from changing the world, but from changing how we see it. Let's take an example. Maria was a mother who had devoted her entire life to raising her son. She worked long hours, gave him everything, sacrificed for him. In her heart, she believed that when he grew up, he would return the love. He would visit often, share his life with her, appreciate what she had done. But as time passed, she noticed something painful. He was distant. He had his own life. He barely called. And when she tried to offer advice, he brushed it off. At first, Maria fought this reality. She begged, she demanded, she even guilt-tripped him. But none of it worked. In fact, it only pushed him further away. She was left feeling helpless, angry, and alone. Then she discovered Stoicism, and she read the words of Epictetus. There are things in your control, and there are things that are not. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. And in that moment she asked herself, can I control my son's choices? The answer was no. Can I control whether he visits me? No. Can I control his love for me? No. But what could she control? Her own response, her own peace, her own happiness. So she made a choice. Instead of waiting for him to act a certain way, she accepted the reality of their relationship as it was. She stopped demanding things from him. She let go of the bitterness. She embraced the love he was capable of giving, even if it was not in the way she had imagined. And when she did this, something incredible happened. She found peace. This is the power of acceptance. But how do we practice this in our own lives? How do we move from frustration to serenity? First, acknowledge what you cannot control. Take a moment and reflect on the things that cause you pain. Ask yourself honestly, is this within my control? If it is not, let it go. You are carrying a burden that is not yours to bear. Second, shift your focus inward. Instead of asking, why won't they change? Ask, how can I change my response? Instead of asking, why don't they appreciate me? Ask, can I find peace without their validation? Third, practice amor fati. This is the most radical step. Instead of simply accepting what happens, learn to love it. Say to yourself, this is exactly how it was meant to be. There is something valuable here. There is something for me to learn, even in disappointment, even in rejection, even in loss. And finally, remember that true strength lies in flexibility. The river does not fight the rocks in its path. It flows around them. The tree does not resist the wind. It bends. This is what it means to live with acceptance. This is what it means to live in harmony with reality. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the universe is change, life is opinion. Everything changes, people change, relationships change, and our peace depends not on stopping these changes, but on flowing with them. So the next time you feel resistance, the next time you feel anger rising, stop, take a breath. And remind yourself, this is outside my control, but my peace, that is mine. Because in the end, acceptance is not about giving up. It is about freeing yourself. But once we accept reality, there is one more step to true peace. We must not only accept, we must choose. Choose serenity over resentment. And that is what we will explore next. Choosing serenity over resentment. Resentment is a prison, and yet so many of us choose to live inside it. We replay past conversations, holding on to words that hurt us. We dwell on betrayals, feeling the weight of every disappointment. We tell ourselves, they should have treated me better. They should have respected me. They should have cared. But here's the truth. Resentment does not punish them. It punishes you. Imagine a mother who has spent her entire life giving her time, her love, her sacrifices, all for her child. And yet, that child grows distant, indifferent. She waits for a phone call that never comes. She hopes for appreciation that is never given. And slowly, her love turns into bitterness. After everything I've done, how can they not see? How can they not care? This pain is real. It cuts deep. But here's the question. Does resentment change anything? Marcus Aurelius gives us the answer. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be." At first, this seems impossible. How can we not be harmed when we have been ignored, when we have been hurt? But what Marcus was teaching is that suffering is not caused by what others do to us. Suffering comes from how we interpret it. Your child's indifference, that is theirs. Your resentment, that is yours. If you release it, if you let go of the expectation that they must be different, you take back your peace. You take back your power. But how do we do this? How do we release resentment when it feels so justified? The Stoics had a practice, a mental exercise called negative visualization. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." Instead of avoiding painful realities, the Stoics prepared for them. They imagined the worst-case scenario, not to fear it, but to become free from it. And so ask yourself, what if my child never changes? What if they never acknowledge me in the way I want? What if they never say thank you? At first, this thought stings, but now, shift your focus. What if I accept this? What if I choose peace anyway? Because here is the truth. Their actions cannot take away your peace. Only your reaction can. Let's look at an example. Anna was a mother who spent years resenting her daughter. Every holiday, she waited for a visit that never came. Every birthday, she hoped for a heartfelt message. And each time, when her expectations were unmet, she became angrier. She told herself, she doesn't love me. She doesn't care. And yet, her daughter lived her life, unaware of the pain her mother carried. But then one day, Anna made a choice. She read the words of Epictetus. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. She realized she had been waiting for something she could never control. And so, she did something radical. She stopped expecting. She let go of the idea that her daughter had to act a certain way for her to feel at peace. Instead, she embraced what was there. She sent messages without waiting for a reply. She loved without demanding love in return. And the most shocking thing happened. She felt free. Because the truth is, you don't need recognition to be at peace. You only need to let go. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So here is the challenge for you. The next time resentment rises, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, does this pain come from reality or from my expectations? And then whisper to yourself, I choose serenity. Because in the end, resentment is a choice, and so is freedom. And there you have it. 7 Stoic principles that can free you from the weight of unfulfilled expectations. You've learned that expectations are the root of suffering, that emotional debt only traps us, that setting boundaries is not selfish, but necessary. You've seen how seeking recognition only leads to pain, and that true freedom lies in emotional independence. Acceptance is power, resentment is a choice, and serenity is within your control. Marcus Aurelius once said, you can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond. That is the heart of Stoicism. That is the key to peace. Now the question is, will you apply this wisdom? Here's a challenge for you. Each week, practice one of these Stoic principles. See how it shifts your mindset. See how it changes the way you experience pain, disappointment, and rejection. Test these ideas in your own life and watch what happens. And if this message resonated with you, help spread it. Give this video a thumbs up if it gave you a new perspective. Subscribe for more insights on Stoicism and practical wisdom, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which of these principles do you struggle with the most? What lesson from this video will you start applying today? Your journey matters. Your story might inspire someone else. And remember, peace is not found in changing others, it's found in changing yourself. Until next time, stay strong, stay stoic,